Welcome to the first edition of Missouri Live, Missouri Tigers podcast here at the Voice of College Football. My name is Zach Ramilius, and I'm here to talk to you about Mizzou. Cade the man says, yo, we're going to preview Auburn. We're going to give a couple of recruiting updates, mostly one big one regarding a certain tackle. And then we'll talk about the season so far. We're halfway done. The Tigers are 5-1. 6 games to go as they get into the back half of the season, and kind of what do we think of this season so far? This is the first episode, so we're obviously not going to do this like next week. We'll have plenty more to talk about, but there's no point in rehashing the UMass game, so it's kind of what I wanted to focus on. But welcome. I'm super excited to do this. Obviously, we started this on Saturday.
But Jerry Jones says he was shocked.
I don't care, ESPN. Started this Saturday. Obviously, we're not on a Mizzou channel. We're still working, getting that updated. Hopefully next week when we play, Mizzou plays the Auburn Tigers, we will get that up and loaded. So let's start with the recruiting update. It's a pretty simple one. Mizzou did lose a safety to he decommitted. He's probably going to Kentucky. Dylan Williams. By all accounts, he's headed to Kentucky. But we'll see where that goes. Best of luck to him. Things happen. You know, it's still a very highly rated class for the Missouri Tigers. He's a 3-star safety. But the big one, there's two tackles that are still kind of in flux right now. Lamont Rogers was at the Texas A&M game. Not a great game for him to be at. And A&M is rapidly trying to flip him. The other one is Andrew, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right. I've heard it 100 times, and I still can't get it out right. Andrew Babaloa. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But a lot of the national people are starting to lean that he's probably headed to Michigan. It's been an interesting recruitment. Mizzou seemed very much out of the water. If you read any of the forums, any of the sites, you read anybody that follows recruiting, Mizzou seemed very much out of it. They slowly seem to creep their way back into it. A lot of it probably is a money thing, just the world we live in now. But unfortunately for the Tigers, it does look like he's going to be headed to Michigan. So keeping Lamont Rogers, who's a very talented tackle, will be super duper important. As you guys can see, my poster, I think it's my Indiana Jones poster that fell, and I just haven't been able to put it back up yet. So I need to take that thing down. Anyway, but as far as that's kind of the end of recruiting interest for Mizzou for football for the 2025 class. I mean, we could. I don't really feel like hashing the 2026 stuff right now. We have, football ends after – the Missouri football regular season ends the week after Thanksgiving, and then we have till around Labor Day next year to talk about the 2026 recruiting class. So we'll avoid that for now. Let's see here. So let's do a little bit of a season recap. And if you're not watching live, that's perfectly fine. You can obviously catch us on any of your favorite listening networks, but leave a comment, please. I'm here to reply. What grade do you give Mizzou so far? I personally am giving Mizzou a B-. Buffalo and Murray State and UMass are 3 games of whatever. Buffalo's not a bad team. They beat Northern Illinois this past weekend. Now, Northern Illinois doesn't look like it's that good of a team, even though they did beat Notre Dame. Cool system we got where Notre Dame can lose to a 500 MAC team and still have a chance to win a national title. We're not going on a rant right now. But, kind of whatever. Buffalo does sit at – and they did – also, Buffalo did beat Toledo. And Toledo went and smoked Mississippi State. So I don't think Buffalo's a half-bad team, but they also got smoked by UConn. So kind of a MAC up and down. Buffalo's not horrible, but they're not probably a top 80 team, 90 team in the country. And then UMass is a bottom 5 team in the country, so nothing you can really. So that leaves 3 games: Boston College, Vanderbilt, and Texas A&M. The Texas A&M game, you get an F. You were not competitive. You did not play. That might as well have been 2021, 2022, insert team here stat. Like that could have been any Mizzou team over the past decade playing against a top 20 team. 2021 also got smoked by A&M, but that one was at home. That was not a Mizzou team that showed up that day that we can be proud of. Now, we'll find out in the near future. Was that just a fluke? Like, did they just have a bad day? Bad days happen. And when you're not an elite team and you don't have elite talent like a Georgia, a Bama, Texas this year, Oregon, when you have a bad day and you have the talent level of Mizzou, you're going to get smoked. It's just the world we live in, And they got smoked, and there's no other words for it. But then, okay, so Boston College. Boston College came in ranked. They beat Florida State. That means basically nothing now. Everybody's beating Florida State except Cal. So great. I never thought Mizzou was going to lose that game. Watching that game, I felt pretty comfortable that Mizzou was going to win the whole time. Now, I did not enjoy watching it because Cal is a team, especially under a first-year head coach, you should bully. They didn't bully him. Like the end for Boston College is a really nice player. He terrorized Florida State, who I think has a decent offensive line. Ezeraku, I mean, he's got 9 sacks this year in 6 games. He's a terror. But offensive line wise, they didn't just bully him. Like the pass protect. We'll get into more of a positional breakdown here in a second. But I think that leads to the B-minus. Now, Vanderbilt, at the time, D. Like, you won the game, so you don't get an F. But D. Vanderbilt was just coming off a loss to Georgia State. It's Vanderbilt. You should out-talent them. But since then, Vanderbilt's beaten Alabama, and they've beaten Kentucky. Kentucky on the road, and they've had 2 really nice wins. So I'm upgrading that to like a C+. Now, the reason it's not a B or an A, because you did win, you got outplayed. If you look at success rates and all those fun metrics that people claim are killing the sport, they did not outplay Vanderbilt on a down-to-down basis. They won the game. Hip, hip, hooray. Good. I'd rather win than lose, but still a largely unimpressive performance from the Missouri Tigers at home. So we have 3 games. Now, they did what they needed. Like, you get an A for the Vanderbilt, or A for UMass, A for Buffalo, and an A for Murray State. Like, you did what you were supposed to do. I thought they looked dominant for the most part. They played some really good defense in those games, outside of maybe like a drive. So, it's hard to, I swear to goodness, every day. It's hard to completely just shut out teams at this level. Getting a shutout is not a, that's pretty close to me. So sorry if you see those lights. Last week when 2 weeks ago doing post game, I had a car crash. The joys of living in cities. So I give them a B-. Like, they very easily could be 4-2, and that would be C, closer to D level, because with the schedule they've had, you could not be 4-2. So, do they have a chance moving forward? Everything is still on the table. You can't get smoked again, though. But we can talk about that more at the end when we talk about what the Auburn game means to this season, when we start breaking down the Auburn stuff. For the season so far, let's just go position by position. The defensive line man, like I'm not a coach. I can look at stuff and kind of know what I'm watching it, but I kind of need to replay it live. I'm like a fan. I'm watching the ball. I'm watching the game. I try to rewatch games a couple times. I've just been kind of busy. But D-line wise, they get no pressure, and they don't do a great job of creating tackles for a loss outside of Chris McClellan, who's been fantastic this year. If Chris McClellan didn't play as well as he has, Mizzou's probably 3-3. He was great in the Boston College game. He was great in the Vanderbilt game. He remains a good player. They're getting a lot of pressure from the edge. Khalil Jacobs, who came from South Alabama, and that's kind of what he does. He just gets he just gets pressure. He makes havoc plays. Also screws up quite a bit, but we'll see. Zion Young, 1 sack. Johnny Walker, who was supposed to become the next guy at the end, he was supposed to take over for Darius Robinson and some DJ Coleman and Isaiah McGuire and all these DNs they've had over the last few years. He had 5 sacks last year, 10 tackles for a loss. This year he's on pace for 2 sacks and 6 tackles for a loss. Now, sacks are harder to get in college football now. Teams are getting the ball out quick. You're not taking 4 or 5 step dropbacks and just padding. But you need more pressure than that. They don't do a great job of creating turnovers in big games. I mean, just in general this year, they have 5 picks in 6 games. Most of those, if not all of those, I know they had the 1 pick against Castellanos. They didn't have any. They didn't, obviously didn't pick off. And then Corey Flagg had a pick against UMass, and Toriano Pride had a touchdown against Murray State in the first game. But other than that, like they're not doing a great job of creating havoc. The one thing you could never question under a Blake Baker defense was that team was going to create havoc. When he stepped in 2022, there was none of this sit-back nonsense. Now, sometimes that killed him. You saw a lot of big plays like to Tennessee 2 years ago, obviously not last year. But you saw some LSU kind of carved him up for some big plays. But they got pressure, and they created havoc in opponents' backfields. And that's kind of what you need to do in college football especially when none of the quarterbacks on their schedule are NFL guys. Like they made Connor Wegman. Connor Wegman was playing 7-on-7 in that game. And he was great. And he deserves every bit of credit getting thrown his way. But he was playing 7-on-7. And Mizzou corners, we'll talk about them in a second. I don't think it's clear they're missing 2. They've really only played 1 really good passing attack. Like, God bless Diego Pavia, but that's not a great passing attack. They really, really have struggled. They really struggled that day. Again, could have just been a bad day at the office. The linebackers, I think just kind of going over positions, I think they've mostly been okay. Corey Flagg's been more explosive than I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be more traditional of a linebacker and kind of sit back. He's done a really nice job of getting into the play, getting into the mix. I think Khalil Jacobs, for the most part, has done a decent job just creating havoc. That's what he came to do. He's a little bit on the lighter side, as are all their linebackers. But I think he's played very well in this role he's been given. When he gets expanded outside of that role, like he has been, it gets a little testy. I don't know what you're referencing there, sir. Just make sure the audio's still good. And then, like Tristan Newsome, he's honestly been really, really disappointing this year. I mean, I just have stats pages pulled up. He did not play against UMass, but he's only got 1 tackle for a loss. He's not creating the havoc he did last year. Last year, he had 7 tackles for a loss in very limited time. Not limited. Like towards the end of the year, played more when Chad Bailey got hurt, but he just hasn't been what I kind of hoped he would be this year. And Chuck Hicks, same thing. He's not creating the pressure in opponents' backfields that you would have hoped he created. Now, as part of that, the scheme, probably they're sitting back a lot more. I think they're trying to do a little bit of red zone roulette. I just don't think it's working that well. I don't think they have the personnel to do that because I don't think they're especially good up front to create stops in the run game. At corner, I think Norwood's been fine for the most part. He was a corner 3 last year, stepping into a corner 1 role. I think in that transition, he's been okay. Nothing special. They haven't played really. They've played 1 great passing attack. So the corners, like, to give them compliments, it's hard to do because what have they done? And again, we're talking about we're kind of doing a season recap here, folks. Don't really, there's no point in relitigating the UMass game. We'll talk about the Auburn game here in a minute, but we're doing a season recap. This is episode 1 of Missouri Live at the Voice of College Football. I am Zach, your host. Zach Carmelli, you can see my name there. Toriano Pride, I think, has been pretty mediocre. He's been very gettable, which is unfortunate. He's giving up snaps now to guys like Marcus Clark and Nick DeLoach. He's still going to play a lot. He has to. Corner's not deep on this. Dre Norwood goes down. This season's over. I just don't think he's been that good. On both big plays that they gave up to Boston College, he was kind of responsible for it with his eyes in the backfield. The one, definitely. And at safety, I'm not a coach. I think Dalen Carnell is more of a star. He's been basically everything you'd hoped. He's been really disruptive. He's done a really nice job. Joseph Charleston's been battling injury. Hard to grade him on anything more. And then they've just played a ton of guys at safety opposite him. But Marvin Burks has 27 tackles. He also has had some really bad moments in the secondary in the past game. He was responsible probably for the other touchdown against Boston College. So that's the defense. I honestly think the defense you give like a C. They've been pretty good in the 3 games where they can kind of bully. They've been able to bully teams. In the 2 games they haven't been able to. They've given up some really big plays, and they've really struggled. Offensively, just kind of going over positions. Let's start with the wide receivers. Josh Manning needs more snaps, man. He needs more snaps. That was a great play, and actually I did make a banner. Let me find it. Because I did want to make sure I hit on this. He needs more snaps. There we go. He's big. He can catch a ball. He's explosive. It wasn't just against UMass. He had a great training camp. That's what was driving me nuts was how much they talked about how Josh Manning had a great, not training camp, but a great summer and a great fall practice, and then just didn't play. He finally got in against UMass a little bit, and he took a freaking ball 60 yards for a touchdown. He's got 8 catches for 126 yards this year. Half of them came on 1 play. Get him in the game and give him opportunities. God bless Mookie Cooper. But I think Josh Manning needs to be your wide receiver 3. You can rotate in Mookie Cooper. You can rotate in guys like Daniel Blood and Mekhi Miller. But I think if you're going out in a 3 wide with a tight end and a running back, it needs to be LB3. It needs to be Theo Weiss, and it needs to be Josh Manning. Just because Josh Manning can create explosives. Explosives are so important in college football. And Mizzou's near the bottom in college football, before UMass especially, at creating explosive plays. Part of that's on the quarterback. I understand that, and we'll talk about Brady Cook here in a second. But there's no reason a receiver can't just take the ball 70 yards to the touchdown. We saw it plenty last year with Burden. I'm thinking of the play in Manning's touchdown. the 63-yarder. Again, I understand it's UMass. He took it was a play action, little rollout. It's the same play Theo we scored on against Florida last year. And he ran 60 yards for a touchdown. You are able to do that as a wide receiver core. But as far as grading wide receivers, it's a little difficult because how much is on them versus how much is on the quarterback, how much is on protection. But we'll talk more about that here in a second. The running backs, coming into the year, I thought Marcus Carroll was going to be the starter. And it's been Nate Noel. And Nate Noel didn't play last week, so he's not going to lead the SEC in rushing. But I think Nate Noel's been very, very good. Again, I see some more people piling in. We're doing a season recap so far. It's the first episode of Missouri Live. Welcome. We'll be talking about Auburn here in a little bit. Please, how would you grade the running backs? Grade the wide receivers? Grade the team overall? Grade Eli? Please leave comments. I would love to make this more of a conversation. This isn't radio. I don't want to just talk at you for however long I'm on here. Please, I would like to make this a conversation with the audience. If it is just me talking at you, fine. I can do that. I've done it for 22 minutes, and we haven't even hit talking about Auburn yet. I think the running backs have mostly been okay. I think Nate Noel has been way better than I thought he was going to be. He certainly he kind of reminds me of Tyler Beatty. I don't think he's an NFL pick like Tyler Beatty was. He's not as good in the pass game as Tyler Beatty was, or as good of a running back. But he kind of reminds me of that stature. He's quick, and they're just not feeding him like they did. Tyler Beatty was getting 35 carries a game at some points just to get him to 200 yards, because Connor Bazelak was just so ineffective that year. Marcus Carroll really had been struggling. He had 3 touchdowns last game. And then I guess you can include Brady Cook in the run game. Those QB draws and QB powers, if it's not coming off of motion with Burden, God, it stinks. It's terrible. Stop it. With no eye candy, the play it hasn't worked in 5 years. Or 2 years, actually 3 years, I should say. The other running backs, Kawhi Lacey's had moments. He wasn't very good last week. Tavares Jones looked really good last week, but he hasn't looked good in other games. And Jarrell Roberts keeps getting credit for how well he pass blocks, but doesn't ever get an opportunity to run the ball. He's RB3. You only have so many carries to go around if you're trying to do a, kind of a 45-55 split. So let's get to the offensive line. I played O-line in high school. I still have no idea what I'm watching most of the time. I don't trust PFF for everything. I like to use my eyes. I think the right side of Mizzou's offensive line with Membu, Johnson, and Tolleson, the center, have been, and if you look at PFF, they kind of agree with me, has been pretty good. Not great by any stretch of the imagination, but Membu is just a freak of nature that likes moving people. Run blocking has been better than pass blocking. But the left side of Caden Green and Marcus Bryant, bad. It's been bad. Caden Green was getting placed with Mitchell Walters for some snaps last week. Now, Caden Green's young. He'll be here next year, potentially, probably. You never know in the portal era. But if Mizzou wants to accomplish his goals, he needs to show that he's the high 4-star. And they're paying him all this money, he needs to be an anchor of that offensive line. Marcus Bryant, he's getting a lot of crap if you look on certain places, and I don't disagree because he hasn't been good. Obviously, the transition from the AAC, where he was all conference, is not translating so far to the SEC in the 2 games he's played that are SEC caliber opponents, or even the 3. Boston College is probably a top 60 team, probably a top 50, maybe a top 50 team. Now, last year with Cameron Johnson, who came from Houston, kind of the same thing. He started off he struggled. And gradually as the season went on, he got better. By the end of the year, he was very good. So I'm kind of hoping that's the track Marcus Bryant takes coming off a bye week. Basically 2 bye weeks in 3 weeks. They had a bye week before A&M, which made that performance all the worse. And then he played UMass. So that's another bye week. So 2 out of 3 weeks, you haven't really had to worry about your opponent. Hopefully Marcus Bryant gets better, and he needs to be better because Auburn's bringing in a pretty dang good defense. Auburn is not where they're at because of their defense. Anyway, and then we'll move on to the big one. What grade do you give Brady Cook? I'm at like a D plus C minus. Like he's regressed, and he might be worse than he was in 2022 because in 2022, even against good teams. Yes, sir. Tell your friend. Thanks, Jackson. He's doing Alabama. He took over from me over at the Alabama post game. Tell your friend Schnooks about the magic on the Missouri Live, Missouri, the voice of college football, and we'll get that channel up and running once we kind of work out some kinks that super annoying, but not the end of the world. That's why we're here at the voice of college football SEC. Subscribe, like the video. I'm here, until I am done going through my sheet of what I wanted to talk about. Brady Cook, if you look at the numbers, they're not that bad. 64% completion. He has only thrown 1 pick. 7 touchdowns, though, in 6 games. Oof. He's averaging 225 yards a game. But in the big ones, man, he just against Vanderbilt, 23 of 37 for 226. Boston College, he was much better. 20 of 30 for 264. Has yet to hit 270 yards. And part of me gets that defenses, especially in the NFL, you're playing a lot of quarters. You're playing a lot of too high. You just do not want to give up explosives. But there's been times where explosives have been there, and he just has not hit it. He had 1 taken away against Texas A&M, but that was like if he missed Luther Burden, good God. I know Sam Horn's dealing with Tommy John, essentially. Bring him in. He's just not hitting his explosives. He's not running the ball with any effectiveness outside of the big run against Murray State. I'm like, I don't even care about that game. Oh, and thanks for this donation, Jackson. You're the man. I'll have to stop by Bama Live. But the question coming around, is there a QB dilemma with him and Drew Pine? I will give this to Drew Pine. He has a better arm, and it shows. Like next year when whoever Mizzou has, maybe even 2 years, because I think next year they're going to dip into the portal. Again, we'll have plenty of time to talk about who the quarterback will be next year. But when Matt Zollers plays or whoever plays, it's going to be weird seeing an Eli Drinkwitz quarterback with a little bit of zip because Brady Cook just doesn't have any. Connor Bazelak didn't have any. Tyler Macon obviously did not have any. Sean Robinson, just these guys. Not like I'm not calling them noodle arms, but just no one had a great arm. But Drew Pine, I think, throws a better football. But I think what you saw in the second half against UMass, he just doesn't have command of the offense. And I don't think he is this guy. I think Brady Cook right now is better for what Mizzou wants to do than Drew Pine. For better or worse. And right now it's a lot of worse. I don't want to – it's Brady Cook was a really nice story last year. Lord knows his first year starting, I wanted him benched. I think they played Florida and then had a bye. And I was kind of hoping, okay, after you go to the swamp, you get whipped. They didn't get whipped. They also lost position games. Maybe – let me look at that schedule real quick because I want to be accurate here. 2022. Yeah, they had a bye and then they had Vanderbilt. I was like, okay, maybe that's when Sam Horn plays because Sam Horn got, poor guy just hasn't caught a break. Was going to step in. It just didn't happen. And he was the start in 23, very famously got booed before the Kansas State game because he was horrible in the Middle Tennessee game leading up to that. Great story last year. This year, back to Jag. Just another guy. He's just been bad. He needs to take a step up. Now, if you listen to the live show after the game Saturday, I talked about this. The last touchdown drive, he hit 2 really nice throws to Brett Norfleet. And we could have talked about the tight ends. All offseason, we spent talking about the tight ends going, man, like how open is Brett Norfleet going to be down the middle of the field? Because everyone's going to be worried about Weiss and Burden and Cooper and Miller and Josh Manning and Daniel. And then Brett Norfleet really hadn't done anything. But he had been hurt. So he had 2 really nice throws to Brett Norfleet, one for like 30 yards and one for a touchdown. Is there a chance, and I think there is, that those throws get him going? We saw this last year. He stunk against Middle Tennessee. Now, was that because they just didn't open up the playbook? Maybe. But that deep shot to Burden in the first drive against Kansas State is what got him going. We'll see if those throws do it this year. I think there's a chance. Like I want to believe in Brady Cook. I really, really, really do. He's been a warrior. He's been a soldier. He's played hurt. He played really well. He's the quarterback, maybe of the 3rd best Mizzou team in my life. Now, I've been following Mizzou football since about 2005. We could have done a show on just like me introducing myself. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do it in the offseason because we're already halfway through the year. But, 13 team was better than last year's team. The 2007 team was better. Now, if you played 13 versus 07, those are the two, both those teams were a half of football away from playing for a national championship. Yeah, I think last year's team was better than 08 that won 10 games, 2010 won 10 games, 2014 won 11 games. Yeah, 08 won 10-4, 10 won, yeah. So I want to give him – I want to believe in the kid, but he needs to continue to give me reason, and he just hasn't been good so far this year. That can, of course, change in a game because now let's talk about the Auburn Tigers. Auburn comes to Columbia. 11 a.m. kick on homecoming, which is a little ridiculous. Who's pleased about that? Lord knows I'm not. As I search for something real quick. But subscribe. I'm here I'm here to break down Auburn now. No, why did that do that? Oh, heavens me. That is not supposed to happen. There we go. I got to play with StreamYard more. But 11 a.m. kick for homecoming. Mizzou fans are ticked. Probably should be. But the lines are out for week 4. Mizzou's a 6.5 favorite. I think 6-point favorite against Auburn. And if you want to know where to bet, where to get betting advice, take a look at this.
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.
You heard the man. Also, check out our Amazon. Guys, the Voice of College Football is, the Voice of College Football is growing. Come join with us. Hop on our backs, guys. We're not going anywhere. We're obviously just opening up a Mizzou channel. We're doing some awesome awesome things. We do have an Amazon. Hop over there. We're obviously getting more channels. The College Football Show with Mark Rogers, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. No reason. And thank you for your super chat contributions. Please use the Amazon link in the description section, and you can find out all about that. But let's get what I want to talk about, which is Missouri versus Auburn. Excuse me. Now, Mizzou, in the 10 years now, or 11 years, they've been in the SEC. They've played Auburn 3 times. 2013 SEC championship game, a 59-42 Auburn win. The game was 45-42 with like 10 minutes left. Like, it was a really fun football game. And then Auburn, Trey Mason ran for 304 yards. Yes, I've had more nightmares about Trey Mason than some people have had about Freddie Krueger. But is what it is. The second game was 2017. And Mizzou was reeling. 4-8, 5-7 in 2015. Barry Odom takes over 4-8 in 2016. 2017 started out with a bunch of losses. They were 1-4. They host Auburn, or 1-3. They host Auburn, and Auburn smokes them. I think Kerryon Johnson had approximately 15 touchdowns. I think it was actually 5. And Auburn smokes them 55-17. The next time was in 2022. Mizzou made their first trip to the Plains since being in the SEC. And Auburn fans have been tweeting about it. Mizzou fans have been tweeting about it. Oh my God, that was a disaster. No one had fun. I mean, Brian Hardison, I think, was more fired after that game than before. Mizzou missed like a 20-yarder at the end of regulation. They go to overtime, force a field goal. And then Nate Noel, good Lord. Nate Pete runs in a touchdown for the win, but fumbled it at the goal line. Mizzou loses 17-14. I'm just pulling up the stats from that game. I mean, Mizzou had 312 yards total. Auburn had 217 yards. Brady Cook, 14 for 24 with a pick. The only person that had a good game was Dominic Lovett, who had 5 catches for 122 yards. Pretty sure that's the game where people really started panicking that Luther Burden might not be here for long, because he did not get a catch. He did not get a touch in the second half, and he had a couple of rushes. I had the game pulled up. I should probably tell you. So 0-3 against Auburn. Again, they're one of the 2 teams that – no, he didn't have a touch that game. Woo, and he wasn't hurt. Yeah, I remember, because people were really ticked about that one now. There's 2 teams Mizzou has not beaten since joining the SEC that were there like when we got here. Obviously, Texas and OU. I mean, they've beaten them in the past, so kind of the same thing. But they've not beaten Auburn, and they haven't beaten Mississippi State. They'll have a chance to do both. They should beat Mississippi State. If they don't, then they're probably like a 7-5 team. Anyway, Auburn in Columbia, it's a must-win. I mean, if you want to make the playoff, you have to win this game. If you want to be more respected, I mean, that's the thing. Mizzou last year, I hate doing this respect thing because who really cares? But Mizzou had respect in 2013, 2014, and then stunk for 8 years. Mizzou football became a joke. Despite the fact that they were going to bowl games every year, but they would every time you got a little bit of hope about Mizzou, they would choke and they would blow it and become a joke. They were just mediocre, and being crappy at basketball that whole time did not help either. If you win, and there was a lot of respect for Mizzou last year. They're like, oh, Drinkwitz doing a really good job. They're a top 10 team. They go to A&M. They get smoked. You're a joke if you lose this game again. You just are. You're 1-2 in SEC play. Your one win was in overtime. You got to get it done. You just have to get it done. And who are they facing? They're facing Auburn. Auburn is not a bad team. They're just not. They're 2-4, and records matter. But there's several of these games, if they replayed them, I think Auburn would win. Cal, they completely outplayed Cal for some facets of that game. Cal has some issues scoring in the red zone. You saw it against Florida State, and you saw it against Miami. The issue is they just cannot stop shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, Peyton Thorne and Hank Brown have been miserable. They haven't gotten any production from the quarterback position. Now, in the run game, Hunter is pretty good. He's averaging 6.8 yards per carry. If Mizzou can't slow him down in the slightest, there could be some issues. And Daniel Alston's done some good jobs in spelling him. And Peyton Thorne's not immobile. Last year, we saw that the only reason Auburn was even in the ballpark of perhaps beating Georgia was because Peyton Thorne was making things happen with his legs. You have to overcome it. In the pass game, Dryden Norwood, congratulations. You're going up against Keandre Lambert-Smith. That's your guy. Lambert-Smith, in 4 years at Penn State, if you haven't watched a lot of Auburn this year, which they haven't really had any big games like outside of Georgia, and then they've been 2-4. So, are you going to watch them play Georgia? I didn't even. I have 4 monitors going. I didn't even watch them play Georgia. But against at Penn State, a couple decent seasons. 500 yards in 2021, 673 yards. But this year he's exploded. He's got more touchdowns this year than he had in any other season. He had 10 touchdowns in 4 years. Coming into this year, he's got 6 already. He's been their big play threat, and he's your main target in the pass game. Now, of course, they have other receivers. No one has one receiver, but that's the main. Like when they want to make a play in the pass game, that's who they're looking for. He's got 24 catches. He's averaging 21 yards per reception. Thinking of him like Marquise Johnson, who I meant to talk about with the receivers earlier. I know he's been kind of hurt, so I guess that's kind of where the heck he's been. But, yeah, he was kind of a free deep shot every year. Cam Coleman, the freshman, has 9 catches for 212 yards. He's kind of the forgotten about freshman because Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith have been so dang good. But that's kind of the world we are in now with these freshman receivers. Malcolm Simmons, it's just a lot of outside of Lambert Smith, there's just a lot of in the receiving corps. Now, Cam Coleman has all the talent in the world, so you have to be careful there. But I think the Mizzou secondary has a chance here to kind of turn the season around for their the outlook on them. And they have to. But now they got to create a couple turnovers. If you can't create turnovers against Peyton Thorne, there are issues. Because Peyton Thorne has been more than happy to turn the ball over. Defensively, they've got some dudes. Jalen McLeod with 7.5 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks. Keldrick Falk, 7 tackles for a loss, 5 sacks. Those two guys create havoc. I mean, Falk, was he? I know he was at App State. Not at App State. Sorry, I don't know what I was looking at. I'm just on just on College Football Reference just to kind of help me with stats and stuff. So I got the exact numbers. Clicked on his name. Something about App State came up. I'm like, he was never at App State because he's only a sophomore. So whatever. Goofy when you do this mobily. And this is first live, so I'm kind of testing some stuff. But he's been awesome. They create havoc. Can Mizzou get to 24 points? If Mizzou can get to 24 points, I think they'll win this game. And I'll just go ahead and give away. I do have Mizzou getting 24 points. I have a final score Mizzou 27, Auburn 23. Now you may be a little shocked, like, oh, you think only Mizzou's can beat them? Well, Mizzou's played 3 Power 5 teams and gotten blown out in one, and then won the other one in overtime and won by 6. I don't know if this team's capable of blowing out Power 5 teams the way last year's team was when they blew out Tennessee. They kind of blew out Vanderbilt. Did they really blow out any? They blew out Arkansas, obviously. They obviously didn't blow out Florida. They blew out South Carolina. Like, I don't know if this team can do that. Be a good week too. Because if you can win this one like 34-17, like, I think so we'll talk about perception here in a second. Last week against Georgia, nothing special from Auburn. Peyton 16-27. Didn't throw an interception though. Got 200 yards. Jarquez Hunter 13 carries for 91 yards. They played okay. 337 yards of offense. You know, they look like they played okay against Georgia, considering it was on the road and they're not a very good football. Like, they're not horrible. I keep saying that. Auburn's not a bad football team. You can't go into this game going, oh, they're 2-4. We should smoke them. No, they're super talented in a lot of spots. They've just really struggled at quarterback, and you got to take advantage of that. Just have to. Phone, knock it off. You're being ridiculous, as am I. Trying to pull up Jalen McLeod. Jalen McLeod was at App State. I'm like, I was like trying to see if he was ever there with Eli, and he wasn't, because he's a 5th year. I didn't know if he was a 6th year. So he was recruited by Sean Clark. He wouldn't have been recruited by Eli. Although I guess Eli would have had to touch base with him. So Eli probably knows all about him. It's a super talented duo. Mizzou's going to have to limit them. So let's talk about, as we've hit the 45-minute mark, let's talk about what this game means for Mizzou. Auburn, good or bad, is a name. It's kind of like Florida or, some of these other schools. Tennessee kind of became a joke there for a while. But Auburn's a name. And Hugh Freeze, for all of his many faults, is a coach that a lot of people look on and go, yeah, he's a pretty good coach. He did some really good things at Ole Miss. At Liberty, it's kind of hard to judge because Liberty just has way more money than anybody else in Conference USA. But if you can win this game and look good doing it, now again, I'm talking about not outdoing my predictions, beating the spread. Even if it's like 30-17 or 27-13, if you can get them by 2 touchdowns at home, I think the outlook on your season changes. Now, what I'd like to see happen is 30-plus points. I'd like to see them get to 34. If you can get to 34 and you win like 34-20 or 34, whatever, this is all hypothetical. I think the outlook of your season changes. Because right now, I think most Mizzou fans, and this includes myself, go, okay, I think they'll win this one. And that gets you to 6-1. And then next week you go to Bama, you probably lose. You might even get smoked. This is my thought process now. We'll 6-2. Then you got to bye. You go to OU. You go host OU. OU, if they're not healthy, probably can't score more than 17 points. But they might be healthy by then. You should win that one 7-2. Then you go to South Carolina, who has maybe the best defensive line in the conference. You might lose that one. And then you play Mississippi State. They stink. And then Arkansas is vastly improved. You get them at home, but they could still get you. So like 8-4, 7-5 even isn't out of the realm of possibility. What just happened? Am I still live? Okay. That was weird. My it tabbed out. It tabbed into Why did my computer do that? I had it with a bunch of tabs, and then it went to a different. Okay, cool. I need a new computer. 7-5 is even a possibility. If you can blow out Auburn, I think there becomes a little bit more energy around this team, like there was up until the Vanderbilt game, even, where okay, everything's on the table. But to make up for the A&M blowout, and we can talk playoff here a little bit, you're going to have to blow some of these teams out. You're going to have to blow out. To make up for it, you need to at least put a hurting on Auburn. You need to put a hurting on Mississippi State. You might need to put a hurting on Arkansas and OU. And you can't get rocked against Alabama. Maybe even you have to beat Alabama and lose South Carolina. Like, hypothetically, if Mizzou gets to 10-2, Mizzou gets to 10-2, like there's going to be a lot of factors on if they're a playoff team or not. We've talked about, plenty of people have talked about this. One of the issues with a 12-team playoff is we have 5 automatic berths. The SEC champion, the ACC champion, Big 12 champion, and the Big 10 champion will make it, as well as the best group of 5 team, which at this point appears to be Boise, but don't count out the 2 Army or Navy, or even like a Memphis. There are 7 at-large bids. Now, you can probably go ahead and pencil in Oregon, or you could probably pencil in Ohio State for one. You could probably pencil in 2 of Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, depending on how those schedules work out. You know, who wins, who loses the Big Ten championship game, whatever. You could probably pencil 2 of those teams into at-large spots. So that leaves us with 5. 5 at-large spots. You're probably going to pencil in Georgia for one, even at 10-2. So that leaves you with 4. Now the issue with the playoff is you have to find 4 teams good enough. Ole Miss has not looked like a playoff team. Now their season's on the brink, and they still have to play Georgia. And who does Ole Miss play? Who has Ole Miss? I know Ole Miss still has Florida left, and then they obviously have the Egg Bowl. But Ole Miss still has to play OU. They play OU in 2 weeks. OU, if they're healthy, can certainly get them. They got to go to Arkansas. They got Georgia. They got to go to Florida. Those are 4. After the fight we saw from Florida against Tennessee, 4 losable games. I don't think they'll lose to Mississippi State at home. But their season's on the brink. I think Georgia loses this weekend, but I don't think they have really anything to worry about the rest of the year. I think they'll beat Ole Miss, even though it's on the road. Tennessee's an interesting one. Like, the loser of Alabama-Tennessee, obviously their season's not over. But the loser, like if Tennessee loses and they know they still have to go to Georgia, like then now your season's on the brink. Alabama, same thing. You lose this one, and you still have to go to LSU. You still have to go to OU. You still got to play. If Mizzou looks good this weekend, you still got to play Missouri, and you still got to play Auburn. This game is huge for the perception of Mizzou. You have to blow them out, or at least win comfortably. I don't have them blowing them out, but if you want to make the playoff, just winning does not do you enough. Because look at A&M's schedule. Even if A&M loses to Texas, they play LSU. That at most should be a 2-loss team. And even if they're a 3-loss team, if they're picking between Mizzou and A&M for a playoff spot, you've already lost that battle because they rocked you at home. You have to start making up ground there to get into that top 11. You know, if LSU continues like this and they beat Bama, but they lose to A&M, they beat, like, if LSU's 10-2, you know, like, you're not getting in over them. You really need to start blowing these teams out, because then if you're lucky and you get some breaks your way, now it's like 10-2 Mizzou versus a 9-3 LSU, or a 9-3 whatever. And I'm just talking about the 2 big conferences. You know, the ACC, Clemson or Miami are probably going to get a spot too. So you're down to 4. I only think the Big 12 is getting 1. I know BYU's off to a really nice start. Kansas State's playing some really good football. Iowa State's playing some really good football. I think those teams will start to cannibalize themselves. But we'll find out. Like, if Mizzou wants to get back in the conversation, they need to start handling teams with ease. Vanderbilt beating them looks a lot better than it did, the night it happened. But they need to – if Mizzou wants to be a playoff team and they want to get a little back of a bit of the respect they had coming into the year, you need to blow them out or at least win comfortably. Like a 34 – like a 2-touchdown lead, win by 13 points. And not like a backdoor 13 points where you score a touchdown at the end. Like, you score a touchdown with 2 minutes left and whatever. Like, this needs to be – if you can do to them what you did to Tennessee last year, you're in a great spot. But Mizzou, this game's huge, man. It's huge. Because after this, you go to Bama. And you win that, playoff run certainly back on. But you need to get some momentum. And the UMass game does nothing for you. Whatever. Like, it's basically another bye week. Luther Burden's going to play. I saw, he went out because Brady Cook threw a hospital ball. Like, it was Peyton Manning to Austin Collie. But I think he's going to play. Like, I don't have it as a blowout because I don't think Mizzou's capable of blowing teams out like this, like they were last year. But they need to blow them out. So, my prediction again, Mizzou 27, Auburn 23. I don't think it's like Mizzou's losing and then they'll score at the end. I think it's just kind of they win, they get a stop, or they have the ball at the end, kind of like the Boston College game. But I don't think a 4-point margin is going to do you enough good. So I think that is it for tonight. Thank you all for being here. And if you're not listening live, leave some comments. Certainly plenty more to talk about as we get more into the season. Monday, we'll be back again, hopefully at the Mizzou channel. Subscribe. Subscribe to the Voice of College Football SC. Subscribe everywhere, guys. Like, come on. We're going up. I don't have a graph, but that's the way we're going. Strap yourselves in. We're going to have a good time. You can follow me on Twitter at PsychoZ50 for all my insane ramblings. Again, College Football Show with Mark Rogers, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern. Mizzou, Auburn, 11 o'clock, Saturday. It's a huge one. It's a must-win game for the Missouri Tigers if they have any hopes of making the playoff. And with this schedule, quite frankly, 8-4 isn't good enough. 8-4 this year is the equivalent of 6-6. So we'll see what happens. I'll be here after the game. We'll go live relatively quickly after the game. We'll have plenty to talk about before we before we watch the rest of the slate that day. And it's a good slate. I'm super excited for this weekend. Obviously, you have the two huge SEC games. I will be glued into Indiana, Nebraska, because Indiana has a real chance at 10-1 or at 11-1, just because of their schedule, and they play Michigan at home. Miami, Louisville is super interesting. Like, Louisville is not a bad team, and they get to host Miami, and they beat them last year. Notre Dame goes to Georgia Tech. Why is that game a neutral site? I don't understand it. Irritates me to no end, but whatever. Michigan, Illinois. Can Illinois get a huge program-defining win? LSU goes into it's going to be a hostile environment in Fayetteville. Kansas State, they're going to go to West Virginia. Like, it's a great Saturday of college football. So while you're watching, tune in if you're a Missouri fan. And if you're not a Missouri fan, we'll talk about that game and break it down for you. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm super excited, guys. Hopefully the Mizzou channel gets up and going. You can watch over there. But other than that, as we hit an hour, MIZ, go Tigers, and I will see you all on Saturday.